So then, what are we talking about in terms of budget recommendations? And really, I'm sitting here providing for you or recommending to you for your consideration. And again, these are the numbers we need to plug this hole. Tuition and fee increase of 7.5%, which would generate $263,000 to fill that $900,000 hole number two, number two, the one I was talking about because we started in negative. So now these recommendations are to try to fill hole number two. Okay. So if we went with 7.5%, we generate $263,000. If we did a 10% increase, we would generate $350,000. You take that from 900,000, then you're at, what is the math? 550,000. There is BR&R and ER&R monies that we are required by higher ed to budget. And BR&R, I have to, whether I like it or not, and it essentially takes money away from me, I have to budget that at $387,000, I think is the number. And what I'm saying is, out of that $387,000, I'm going to have to essentially shift, but I can't do it in the submission of the budget. I have to wait till the year starts. I'm going to have to shift some of that to help my operating budget come July 1. And I think that I can reasonably shift 190 from BR&R and 50,000 from ER&R. And ER&R is 121,000 that I am required to put in there, so that I can maintain our expenditure levels and those funds for budgeting purposes at the level they were at in FY12. So I don't have control of that, I've got to do that. But I do believe, and I'm basing that on what we've done this year, that we can shift some of that to make up almost $250,000 of that $900,000 goal. So if you do the math, and you look at $250,000, it's a little less, right? It's 240, but about $250,000. And you look at about $250,000 on a 7.5% increase, it would be less than another $100,000 if we were at 10%. We can make up half of that, a little more than half, right? We would go from $900,000 hole to about a $5,000 hole. Then the next thing that we would recommend, and again, we'll answer questions at great detail as you need to ask them, is I would have to impose a vacancy savings on every department within the institution. And I want to talk about what that means, and I want to talk about why I would recommend that. First of all, there is, in the alternative to a vacancy savings, which is really saying to every department, I need you under a 7.5% increase to cut all your salaries in your areas, or your spending in your areas on salaries by 4.26%. If we got a 10%, I would be telling them all, you need to cut your salaries by 3.3%. But here's the problem. The problem is, we are so tight now, because we've squeezed this for now going on 3 years. We have seen a real tightening of these operating budgets, and we've lost a lot of positions in the last 3 years. And we're at a point now that it's just not that meaningful. We're not having much turnover, and we are at risk if we say we're going to do this. We're at risk for those dollars actually materializing. They may or may not. In the case of the 4% or 3%, if you look at my area, my department, there's only 2 of us. Well, if I impose a 4 or 3% vacancy savings on me, there's no way I can really make it up if my position and my administrative assistant's position are filled. And that's the case with a lot of departments. They're so small, they're so lean, that will they have some turnover as an institution? Yeah, we'll have some. I just don't know if it's going to be enough to generate the savings of a 4 or a 3%. I think that the other issue in terms of positions coming up is going to require us, and we've already talked about it, to have a mandatory 3-month period when any position opens up you can't fill it for 3 months. And if we follow that directive, it's not going to apply to all the positions that might come vacant. And the reason is this: there's no way we could reasonably impose that on the faculty positions. If they have a position that comes up, I can't say to Dr. Martinez, "You got to hold it for 3 months." And he'll say, "Well, then how do I teach biology?" Or how do you know? So there are some of these positions that do not lend themselves to this. The administrative and the student support positions do, but then we lose out. But we're going to have to do that. We're going to lose out on those services. We're going to be thinner. It's going to tax the current level of staffing, but that's the only way that we can do it. So we're at risk for that. What does that mean? Also, is if I experience a larger decline in enrollment than what we're estimating of 10%, then we're going to be looking at cutting some more positions come fall, okay? And that's going to be very difficult. So there's no real easy fixes for this whole number 2. There just isn't. And I would say that if this was the first year that we were really squeezing the staff numbers and the operational numbers, this might have been a doable task, but then because this is already the 3rd year of squeezing pretty hard, there's just not a lot more to squeeze. So, but do I think we can make it through? I still think that we can. We will have to try to save and really pull back in other areas. The real big bucks in this institution, just so that you're aware of it, really though are in the areas of maintenance and operation or our IT services. In IT, almost everything is driven by a contract. And a lot of the software that we use, the licenses, the maintenance of our systems, we've got those numbers, I think, pretty well documented in terms of what they are. And there's not a lot to squeeze out of there. We just can't. The banner system, which is the accounting system that we use, it's a high maintenance, intensive software, and it has a lot of moving parts. It has a lot of users, and it doesn't offer us a lot of opportunity for savings. We can probably make some, but not a lot.
I have a question. On the flip side of this, you said that you're projecting or you're using for purposes of budgeting a 10% drop in enrollment. What is the value of a 1% drop in enrollment? So let's say enrollment dropped by 11% or 9%. What, for every 1% change in that enrollment number, do you have a rough number?
It's about 40,000 if I...
How much?
About 40,000.
40,000. So if it was only 9%, we'd have another 40,000 revenue.
Actually, it's about 35,000.
35,000. Okay.
Yeah. And one of the things that I do want to mention, okay, is we're estimating a 10% drop in enrollment, right? If we get a 7.5% increase, I'm still in the hole for 2.5% of because of the drop in enrollment. If it is at 10%, if it's at 12%, then I'm in the hole even more.
Okay,
So,
but what I'm thinking right now, I'm thinking out loud, is that if we go ahead, if we do raise it 7-8%, how much more decrease will it be? Just because we can't afford it. So it wouldn't be a 10% decrease just because we raised it 7%. It'll be 12, 15, 16, 20% because we raised tuition 7%. So there's a double-edged sword. We raise it to make money, but then we lose drop in enrollment even more than what we estimated because we're trying to make up the difference.
you're right.
What does 1%? What does a 1% tuition increase actually cost a student that's taking 15? Let's use 15 credit hours. What does each 1% increase in tuition cost?
$1.14 credit hour.
$1.14 per credit hour. So it'd be $15 $15 per 1%.